It's time to prepare yourselves, outdoor ladies and gentlemen. Winter is coming. Okay, that is probably the most overused line in all of TV and movies, but it doesn't make it any less true. We finally have consistently colder temperatures, which means great hunting and frozen toes. For those of you out there like me, once you're cold, you're done. You're just sitting there shivering so hard, the tree's shaking, and your teeth are clattering so loud, there is no way those deer can't hear you. And the truth is, once you are cold, there's no warming up unless you move around or just go inside. And I don't recommend doing jumping jacks in your tree stand. So, short of ruining your hunt by doing a quick workout to warm up, what do? What are your options? Well, we're going to go over 5 things you can do to make sure you don't get too cold in your tree stand. So the first 2 are things you should do before you even get in your tree stand. And the first is to eat something. Now, eating generally leads to a slight increase in body temperature because your metabolic rate increases. This allows your body to properly digest whatever it is you decided to stuff your face with. The chemical reactions taking place during digestion can increase your overall body temperature by as much as 2 degrees. Now, I know just 2 degrees doesn't sound like much, but when it's below freezing outside and you've got a long sit ahead of you, every little bit helps. Now, before you go out and buy a whole bunch of donuts and whatever you can get your hands on, know that not all food is created equal. You're going to want something that's high in complex carbohydrates because it's slow digesting, which means that your metabolic rate is going to be higher longer. So you're going to be able to enjoy that benefit much longer than if you were going to load up on sugars. You're going to want to pick stuff like oatmeal, peanut butter, and pasta. Now, the second thing you need to think about before you even get to your tree stand is do anything you can to avoid sweating. Now, we all know sweating can ruin our scent control preparation, but it can also ruin the insulation factor of your clothing. If your base layer is damp, it's going to draw all that heat away from your body, and you'll get cold so fast, I wouldn't be surprised if you were cold within an hour of sitting down. That's why it's always so dangerous to be cold and wet. Now, one thing you can do to avoid sweating is to not wear all of your clothing to your stand. If you've got a heavy coat or bib overalls or something, don't wear them on the way to your stand. Wait till you get up there to put them on. Now, make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get to your stand as well. If you're rushing, you'll not only work up more of a sweat, but you'll be louder and you run the risk of forgetting something. So wake up a little earlier, take your time getting to your stand. Now, the last thing to keep in mind for preventing sweat is something that's probably too late to do anything about now, but it's something you should keep in mind for the future, and that is to be in shape. The more in shape you are, the less likely you are to overexert yourself and sweat profusely. So keep that in mind for the future, and it'll pay dividends in all aspects of your life. Now, the third thing to keep in mind when it comes to staying warm in a tree stand, and that is to protect your core. Now, keeping your core warm is the most vital part of your body to keep warm, and for obvious reasons, but for some less obvious reasons, your core is where your limbs draw all their heat from. So if that gets cold, your arms and legs are soon to follow. Now, keeping your core warm is accomplished multiple ways, but it all starts with dressing properly. And you're going to want to dress in layers because it does a better job of insulating you than one heavy layered up. Now, another way to keep warm is to buy those cheap disposable heat packs. Now, the trick to those disposable heat packs is to open them long before you need them. It seems to take them forever to heat up. So open them at the truck, stick them in your bag, and that way, whenever you find yourself needing them, they'll be nice and toasty. Now, if you find you don't want to use the disposable route, you can buy some made by Zippo, or there's some electric ones. The thing to keep in mind with the Zippo ones is that you can smell the lighter fluid. So if you're concerned about that smell, go with the electric ones. Now, I recently started using those heat packs designed specifically for muscle aches. They come with a wrap that holds the heat packs to your lower back kidney area. Now, keeping your kidneys warm helps tremendously. All of your blood flows to your kidneys, so it helps distribute that heat throughout the rest of your body. Now, speaking of kidneys and lower backs, another thing to keep in mind is to tuck in your shirt. If your shirt's untucked and it rides up a little bit, your back is completely exposed. And the same concept of applying heat to your kidneys, if you apply cold to your kidneys, it's going to just distribute that all over your body. So it'll just drain all the heat from you. So tuck in your shirt. Now, the fourth way to stay warm is to protect your hands and your head. Also, throw a wool cap on. It'll help protect your ears, and if your coat has a hood on it, throw that up as well. Now, hands are one of the first parts of your body to complain about the cold. It can get especially difficult when bow hunting when you can't wear a thick glove on your release hand. Now, what I do is wear a pair of thin gloves and then a second pair of gloves on my bow hand only. What I also do is use one of these hand mufflers with one of those disposable hand warmers inside. But just a little tip, this little viewing port that's supposed to make it to where you can type on your phone or whatever without taking your hands out. It's cool in concept and all, but if it's warm in here and cold out here, this is just going to fog up and make it pointless. So, in my opinion, don't even bother with it. Now, another product to consider are insulator strips. They attach directly to your bow or gun with an adhesive back, and it helps keep the metal or wood from seeping through your gloves. If you hold your bow or your gun for any amount of time, you know how quickly that cold can seep through your gloves, so you might check those out. Now on to my worst enemy on a cold day, my feet. Now once my feet get cold, I'm done. I'm just one of those that, for whatever reason, I cannot stand my feet to be cold. Call me a wuss if you want to, I don't care, it's true. Now the first thing you need to do to help keep your feet from getting cold is that first layer of socks needs to be something that's moisture wicking. It goes back to the tip about not sweating. If your feet sweat, you'll just draw that heat away. So your first layer needs to be moisture wicking. Now on top of that layer, I like to use the adhesive backed foot warmers. They're disposable like the other ones, but it helps stay in place. If you throw one of the regular ones in there, they might move around and be uncomfortable. So put one of those adhesive ones on there so they stay in place. Now on top of that is your heavy insulation layer, something that's made mostly of wool. Don't make them too tight, because if you stretch those out, those fibers spread out and you ruin the insulation factors. So you want them to be a little loose. And the same thing goes for your hunting boots. You don't want them so loose that you're tripping over yourself all the time, but you don't want them so tight that it's kind of constricting everything in your feet. If you constrict that blood flow, your feet are going to get cold because it's not getting that warm blood. So, and not only that, it also kind of ruins the insulation factor. Your insulation is the air pockets, so keep that in mind when you're buying your hunting boots. Now, the last tip for keeping your feet warm, this is something I discovered recently, and they have been a godsend, and that are boot covers. What you do is you slip them on over your boots once you get to your stand, and they help hold in that heat. I even throw one of those disposable hand warmers in each of them too to just help that much more. Like I said, once my feet get cold, I'm done. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure my feet stay nice and toasty. Now, preparing for a cold weather hunt takes some forethought and planning. Hopefully the stuff we've talked about in this video will help you make your next cold weather hunt more enjoyable. A more enjoyable hunt means you're going to sit there longer, and the longer you sit there, the more chances you have for success. Now, if you have any more tips and tricks for staying warm in the stand, put those down in the comments below. The more tips we have, the better. That way we can make sure we all stay warm in the stand. So until next time, guys, stay informed.